Welcome to Not Going Quietly, the podcast where we inspire growth, beat down biases, and get into all sorts of good trouble with your host, Britt East. No topic is off limits as we explore ways to help everyone leap into life with a greater sense of clarity, passion, purpose, and joy. So get ready to join us for some courageous conversation because Not Going Quietly starts right now. Hey everyone, welcome to Not Going Quietly, the podcast for outraged optimists and heartbroken healers all over the world, where we surface life's searing truths in the name of radical togetherness. I'm your host, Britt East, and I have a fantabulous featured guest today, so let's get into it. Kevin Martin is a passionate mindset coach dedicated to supporting spiritual gay men through sexual and relational empowerment. Growing up on a family farm in Pemberville, Ohio, Kevin was inspired by his grandfather and found joy in activities like riding roller coasters at Cedar Point. Raised in a conservative Lutheran church, Kevin faced challenges in accepting his sexuality, which fueled his journey towards self-love. Now, he offers individual coaching and courses such as Celebrating Sexuality, aiming to help others release sexual and relational anxiety and embrace their true selves. Kevin, it's so great to meet you. Thanks for joining us today. How the hell are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited and so grateful. Yeah, just thank you for having me. I'm just absolutely honored to be here to connect and just to chat. I'm honored to be here, like, just on this planet in general, but to hold this space with you is really amazing. So thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm so excited to chat with you today. So let's just dive right in, because there's so much I've been looking forward to chatting with you. Why do you think? And I'm gonna kind of start with the supposition that we're kind of on the same page here, because I just bet we are. But why do you think gay sex, in particular, is an intrinsically healing activity for our bodies, our minds, our souls, ourselves, our society as a whole?
Yeah, that's such a good question, and it truly is. Like I've been doing some deep like coaching work myself as a client and working with my business coaches like over the past this past summer. And as we've been navigating through, what that kind of looks like how I want to integrate myself more fully in the work that I do. My coach Tamara, who I'll shout her out anywhere I go. I just feel like I'm an evangelist for her. She's absolutely amazing. But she came up with this slogan of like gay sex saves lives, and like when she said that, I was like, holy shit! Like that just kind of like just like blew my mind wide open. But and then I started thinking about it further and further. I was like, you know what? Like she is absolutely right. And then just by the beauty of the universe, within like the next week, I was in a session with a client, and we were talking about all the progress that he's made over the past couple of years that we've been working together. And he arrived at this really beautiful and pivotal point where he kind of took a step back and realized like he was able to notice all of his growth along the way, but also recognized that if he hadn't had done this work for himself when it comes to accepting his own, not only accepting but like welcoming, embracing his own sexuality and how that shows up within his own body and his relationship, his partnership, his marriage, then like he could very clearly see like a line to suicide. And for him it was like a direct path. And like in that moment it just kind of like struck me of like the magnitude of this work. So pairing that like with what Tamara said, it was like, holy cow, like this, yeah, on the surface we might be talking about sex, and that can look like hookups or masturbating or intimate time with our partner, just even intimate time with our own self. But what is that deeper message that's happening? And that deeper message is like, I have an ability and a permission and a value here to exist. And like there isn't anything that is inherently wrong with me. Like I am allowed to be who I am, and I'm allowed to respect my body in a way that allows me to feel pleasure and that also allows me to connect back to myself and connect to the world around me. And so, in this path, like when we talk about sex, like, yes, sometimes like it can be surface level of, like in the moment, how were we feeling there, the anxieties, the worries, the concerns, but it's so much deeper than that, of like, how are you feeling as a human? Like, how are you feeling in, like, your your own navigation of what it means to be here, like. And this is why, like, sex is so powerful, is that it holds the capacity to be all of it. Like, it can be in the moment, and it can also be incredibly deep, and it can be a symbol or a stand-in for our insecurities, the things that we're working toward, the biggest accomplishments that we have had. So it's powerful, and like, I think like that's one thing I really just want to communicate, like, right across the board, is that, yeah, even like if somebody interacts with my work, or they see it online, or they see it on social media, like, yes, it's front facing in the sense that it's very, very hypersexual, but it's a channel to help our community connect with themselves individually further, and with each other.
Yeah, I love that. I guess one of my current pet peeves, and I've been talking about this quite a bit on the show, is the homogenization of our culture and the respectability politics that maybe was an unintended consequence of marriage equality, where so many of us view coming out as a singular event and wonder why we're not happy as queer people, as gay people, whomever. We think like, oh, I just made a disclosure to some family and loved ones once, and now why don't I feel like I quite fit in? And my theory, and I'm hoping you can help tease this apart, is that for so many of us, we live our lives in silos. And of course, at the top of the list is all of the sexual impulses, feelings, urges, desires that we either leave unexplored, disconnected, unexpressed, unshared, unfulfilled, with ourselves, much less with another person, much less just talked about and bantered about among friends and loved ones. And so there's all of these closeted behaviors and modes of expression and ways of being that we are carrying with us like a sack of rocks on our back. And then we think to ourselves, I wonder why I'm not happy. So to me, sex is like the tip of that spear, clumsy metaphor there. But I mean, it's like there's nothing more potent and scary to talk about and disclose than our fetishes, our fantasies, our desires, our frequencies. So how do we start doing that? How do we start developing our own culture as gay men, as queer people, however we identify, independent of anything that we're consuming in this kind of sanitized mass media world, the saturated heteronormative world? How do we start to stand on our own and create our own sexual culture?
Mm. Ooh, ooh, that's so good. Yeah, yeah, you hit on such great points there, and yeah, like when we think of like times of like of initial coming out, or and even like coming out throughout the lifespan, like, it when it happens, it feels like such a snapshot of time. Like, it's like, uh, it feels very static. Like, this is who I am, and I'm not allowed to change. And it makes sense that it has that feeling and that impression, but then that's also completely different from how humans are and how we operate as humans, where we are growing and evolving and changing every single moment of every single day. And so, you know, there might have been that snapshot in time where we might have felt that, to me, for me to identify as this in this moment looks like this, but then literally the next 5 minutes after that, that could be totally different. And so I think, like, when we can cultivate that permission within ourselves and within our communities, and even starting within our friend groups, within the people that we have sex with, within our partnerships, within the people that we hook up with, this sense of permission of like, you know, whatever you are feeling right here, right now, let's go for it. And I love it. And I celebrate that, not only for you, but for myself. And so, um, like, the, I really like using, I love language. Like language is super fun. And here, like, I love using the words like celebrate, permission, and like cultivate, because it sends this message of like, there is no right or wrong. But rather like, let's explore and see what that looks like in this mindful moment that we are in. Knowing that the wind may blow and tomorrow we may feel totally different, or we might feel the exact same for the next 40 years. And who's to say any of that is correct or incorrect? Like nobody can, because it's as long as it's a reflection of how we're feeling at this point in time, then that's what's most important. And so, like, kind of on a cultural level, like, how can we do that? I you know with each of us taking, it's it's hard, but I often think that it does start small. Like, it starts just small with our own individual actions. And when, like, if I'm going to hook up with somebody, asking them in the moment, what feels good to you right now? What would you like to do right now? Maybe we have chatted and we talked about something totally different, but in the moment, maybe we're both super anxious and we don't even want to do anything, or we just want to relax or chill or watch some TV. And then maybe we'll check back in a little bit later. Or maybe we said things were off limits beforehand, but then when we're in the moment, we're feeling pretty good, and we mutually give consent and change our minds. It's like, I think, like, when we start there, like in these individual experiences, with the people that we interact with our own interactions, and even just our own time by ourselves, like, that's where we start to lay the foundation and the mold. And then that becomes the new standard for ourselves, or the new norm. So then the next time that we have a new partner, or the next person that we interact with, or maybe the person we hooked up with, when they interact with somebody else, like, it starts to web out from there. And then, like, we can start to build through experience, this new perspective of, yeah, let's celebrate the moment for what it is, as a honoring of not only like our own like self-respect, but the connection that we feel right here in this individual space.
Yeah, something you said sparked in me. I think like what you're alluding to requires, maybe a prerequisite to that is more integration, bringing the sexual components of our lives in alignment into the light with other facets of our life, maybe even every facet of our life. So, like you're saying, if we're hooking up with a stranger, maybe we celebrate that fact rather than feel ashamed about it. And what would that mean? And what would that look like? How could we express celebration in the moment that's fun and life affirming, as opposed to furtive secret acts, which can be fun and life affirming too. But whatever that means to us, that is our art that we practice. But it requires that integration, so that there's love in every moment. There's love in the room, even if it's a stranger, a random person, or group of people. We're still bringing love with us. We're not divorced from those sides of a person. When it's a pot boiler, a pressure cooker, and we've segmented off, we've cut off the sex from the rest of our lives, and it can only be expressed in this hour. And if I miss this hour, then I'm totally screwed. It creates a sense of urgency that derails that connection, which requires time. What I loved about your scenario that you kind of whimsically painted was that not only was it kind of about continuous consent and being in the moment and being alive to the experience and a certain amount of tender shared space, um, but it required us to be open-hearted. And so I think like figuring out ways to unite our tender heart with the full strength and force of sexual feeling is ultimately what is required. And like you said, it starts small with our daily decisions. Instead of thinking like writ large about the culture, that's too much. But if we start small, like how am I going to treat this hookup? How am I going to treat my partner or my partners in this moment? How am I going to bring love in the room, even if we're enacting a sadomasochistic ritual fantasy? How am I going to integrate more of myself? And then before, during, and after, there's an arc to our journey where we talk about it, we dwell on it euphorically, that whole palette.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. You hit it directly on the head. And like, and for me, like it boils down to, yeah, recognizing any shame when it may be coming into play. And and what I what I love to approach, and how I love to approach this with clients is, approaching that shame from a loving standpoint of its own, where it's not something that we are trying to necessarily fully get rid of or like destroy, or we don't want to shame itself in a meta way, because that'll only exacerbate it further. But how can we ask of like, okay, what can this teach us? What can we learn from it? How can we soften it? And also, how can we start to take the power back from it too? um, I always love to take a look at ways of like, how can we work with where we already are, whether we are, anxious, nervous, afraid, whatever that may be. Like, let's work with it, and see what this emotion or this experience is communicating to us, that we can then pinpoint as to a need that we may have, or a deep lying fear or insecurity, or something that we're looking for. So on that shame piece, like, I love to just hold that with a bit of tenderness, um, and and then too, like the concepts of, like, giving ourselves just the permission to be however that is in this moment, from this lens of like, however that is completely okay. Like, there and I feel like a broken record because I say this all the time, and I feel like my clients are probably like super annoyed with me at it by this point. But like, I tell them just again and again that like, there really is no right or wrong here. Uh, Whether it's how we're doing relationships or how we're doing sex, like, it's completely okay to be horny 24/7, or to not want to have sex at all. Like, it's okay to walk around and like, to not wear any clothes, to be super comfortable in your body. And it's also okay if that's not comfortable for you, if you're more comfortable being more clothed. Like, it's okay if you love hookups, it's okay if you hate hookups. Like, it's okay if you and your partners have sex all the time, it's okay if you haven't had sex in the past 2 decades. Like there is no magic formula, uh and there is no rubric, there's no rule book that we have to abide by. But that the closest of a magic formula that we can find is super simple, when we can just turn inside and just say like, what's true to me right now, um, and how can I honor that, um, and shame does complicate this, because shame will try to wiggle its way in and say it'll start to direct us toward what it believes is okay and not okay. And so like, we do always have to address that shame piece. Yet the magic of addressing shame is, we know that literally just by speaking it out and giving it space, it automatically subsides. Um, and so even if we don't have to arrive at a certain outcome with shame, just speaking it out of like, oh yeah, I feel really shamed when I do have sex, or I feel ashamed because of the way that I was raised, or what I grew up with, or where I come from. Then it's like, okay, that makes sense. But just the speaking of that has already given it so much light that it's not as pressurized. And so I love that you bring up that pressurizing point too, because you know any time that we can alleviate as much pressure from ourselves as possible and from our circumstances, our interactions, our experiences, our hookups, like the more love we automatically infuse into that, and the more connected that we feel to ourselves and to the people involved. Um, and so, I'd love to just normalize, with clients, and when this happens, in my own experiences, if it gets messy, or if one of us farts, or if like nobody can get off, or if we're super tired, or like no matter what the experience is, yeah, we just allow it to be, and give that space, and taking that pressure off any certain outcome, or goal or objective, where we're just here because we really care about each other, and we care about ourselves, and this is how we want to connect with each other in this moment. Like, uh that type of a reframe and approach can quite quickly undo a lot of that shame itself too, because a lot of those shame messages tend, if like, can again be based in a lot of the ways that we grew up, but then enter within our own community. It's a lot of it's based on performance or looks or things like that, and when we can remove that pressure by giving ourselves permission to be just exactly who we are, then a lot of that drifts away, and it's really really powerful.
Yeah, what you're describing is like indirect procedures. When you're looking at an issue or an opportunity, you can look at it, you can act directly or indirectly. And sometimes the fastest way to address something is indirectly. And like you're saying, in a lot of cases, by having all this great fun, the unintended consequence can be a reduction in shame. But what you said that really got me going, based on my own life and the way that my own personality, the way I move through the world, is that not to shame. Because, I'm the kind of personality that's really intense. I want to get an A. I want to win. I want to be the best. And so it's like, I don't want shame. I don't like it. It doesn't make me feel good. I want it to go away. I want to eradicate shame. But what you're describing is more about being with my tender heart in all its imperfections, accepting the intrinsic messiness of the human experience and just being with it, rather than labeling necessarily, rather than fixing, rather than tweaking, rather than addressing. It's like, let's start by really being with one another, even if only for a moment. Even if you're a stranger, there can still be love in the room. Like you said, we're making a choice to connect in this way in this moment, and let's sit in the fullness of that moment and celebrate that. And a lot of this stuff is just going to dissipate. So tell me how you've alluded to some of your client services. What kind of people come to work with you? What kind of clients do you have? How do you get started with them?
Yeah. So I'm just so grateful to be able to do this work, and a lot of the I have clients, all across the age spectrum, the gender spectrum, the sexual orientation spectrum. Um, yeah, I I think one of the things that kind of draws people to me is, like that own like depth of vulnerability and like authenticity that I bring, where I I'm I'm somebody, I cannot like bullshit anybody to save my life. And it's like growing up, like playing cards where we had to lie. Like I was always terrible at it. Like everybody could always tell, like if we were playing like poker or BS or something, that like, okay, yeah, Kevin's lying. I just like wear my heart on my sleeve, but that's what draws a lot of people to me. And that's how we connect really well. Um, and so like my, in getting started and working with clients, like it often more often than not, like tends to be a bit of a relationship building process in the start where we might we might get connected at a networking event, or we might interact on social media. They might start following me. I'll send them a message, just check in, like, hey, how are you? Like, it's not salesy, but I'm just trying to build a connection, and let them know this is what I do. Here's how I support. But then we'll respond to each other's stories and just build that human interaction. And then over time, if that may fall into a space of, hey, I think you could help support me in this way. And I'm like, okay, great, let's do it. So I think for me, like knowing that this work is human centered and person first, that's always the number one driver for me is, what is the relationship that we have, that I have with this client, where I always want clients to feel as safe and comfortable and empowered as possible, because that's when they can genuinely open up. That's when they can talk about the things that they've been withholding for decades, and really start to do that deep work. And so I'm very like compassionately gentle in my approach, but I'll nudge when it's needed. But taking my time and kind of building that foundation, like, tends to be really helpful. And this is, like, I'll never turn anybody away. I work with anybody and everyone, again, all ages and genders and sexual orientations, all races, everybody. And also, knowing that our specific gay community has a lot of needs that aren't being met, or that are being, like, under addressed. I like to provide this channel as well to help address some of those very specific needs that, again, relate only or particularly to gay men within the gay community. And so yeah, a lot of the clients, that because of that approach that I take, it tends to land with them really well. So I tend to work with a lot of people who are very heart centered or heart driven. A lot of folks from religious backgrounds, or conservative backgrounds, or align with some form of spirituality, have an internal belief in, like, the power of human connection, and so we kind of, like, just, like, naturally gravitate toward each other. Right along with that too, in the therapeutic coaching perspective that I hold, it's like, my role is never to change anyone. And so, I'm simply there, like, holding a roadmap based on what they told me they want to take a look at or work toward. And I'm just guiding the car along the way, but they're doing, like, all the driving. And so I'll also have clients who will interact with, and, like, we'll have totally different perspectives or come from completely different angles, and we do incredible work together there too, because we're able to hold that space for each other, and that's also super helpful to them and what they're working toward. And this is why I just say, like, I'm just so grateful for this work, just to be able to talk with people and help them through whatever's on their mind is it's the greatest gift.
So what do sessions with you look like? Like, what, if somebody signs up with you, what can they expect?
Yeah. Uh, yeah, that's a great question too. So, in keeping, like, with the individuality of each person, um, I start every session the exact same way. It's always, hey, how are you doing? Like, and how are you doing right now? And then with, like, the skills, that I've been trained in and that I have, I'll start to read the direction in which they want to go. There's some clients who want a very pragmatic, okay, let's talk about this, let's address these concerns, let's address these issues. Sometimes they'll bring in, their notes, and we'll be like, I have these questions. I'm like, fuck yeah, let's go for it. Let's address them. Let's hit it. We got 45 minutes. You got it. Sometimes I have clients who, they'll come into the session and they're like, I don't even know what I want to talk about today. I was like, oh, you got it. What did you do? Like, what's on your mind? And then the conversation will kind of flow that way. So, when somebody reaches out and, they express interest in working together, I'll ask them, what's kind of, what's on their mind? What are they looking for? So that way I can have that general idea of, how I can best support them, but also what outcome, if any, they have in mind, because I do want to make sure that we are going somewhere that's beneficial. But again, that somewhere and what that looks like looks totally different from one person to the next. A lot of clients will come in and we'll only meet for one session at a time, and that works really well for them. And then I might hear from them 3 years later, and they'll pop back in, same thing for another session, and they'll be out and running. And then I have clients who we meet every week, and we've been meeting every week for 6-7 years, and that's just what works really well for them. And so I always, like to reflect and respect that back of where they are at that point in time. Um, but yeah, a lot of the main areas that I typically tackle with, yeah, sexual empowerment, shame, sexual anxiety, performance anxiety, a lot of body image, just that own comfort in our own skin and our own sexuality, and then a lot of relationship work too. So exploring open relationships or a consensual non-monogamy, conflict resolution through that, like just the challenges of jealousy and different emotions, and new emotions that we might not have experienced, new dynamics. So I just like to hold these spaces, and kind of provide whatever support's needed at that moment.
One of the really cool things about you is there's so many ways to engage with you. You produce lots of wonderful free content, and we will load up the show notes with links to your socials and your website so people can delve in and check you out and find out, what's a good fit for them. But could you tell us some about, you've got a podcast, you've got a blog, you have a Discord server, you've got the Bad Boys Club, the back room. Can you kind of walk us through this? Because it's really cool. I don't know that I've met anybody quite like, has this wide array of services. So you're providing so much for the community and the world. Can you kind of help us sort through all that?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And thank you. And yeah, sometimes I think about it and I'm like, like, oh shit, I hope this isn't like overwhelming. And yeah, like when I come from, these ideas of, okay, how can I help support in any way that I can with the skills or like the tool set that I have. I always want to make sure that it's not only intentional, but that it's providing something beneficial to someone. And as I'm a very spiritual person. I think like the whole reason that I personally am here on this planet is just to help in any way that I can. Like I always want people to know that they like are loved and not alone. Like that's just kind of been my core message since I was young. And so, each moment and like every day when I wake up, like I ask myself the same question of like, okay, if today is my last day that I'm here, have I helped as many people as I can? Have I done all that I can? And like, if I take my last breath today, like, will I be able to say like, okay, yeah, I did all that I could do. And so if an idea is coming to mind of like a different channel or a different way of working with someone, and it answers that question of like, okay, yeah, like this falls in line with that intention, then I'm like, okay, let's do it. And as I was getting started, like in my profession in the mental health field, like I quickly saw how inaccessible mental health work can be, especially on the coaching side, where coaching isn't like an insurance based service, and it's often highly expensive. But it's often what a lot of people are needing too. And so like creating opportunities that were like affordable and accessible was really important to me as well. So I also want to like balance that piece out. And so that's why I have kind of these multitude of resources, is to hit these, because everybody's coming here and interacting from a different space. Some people may have the financial resources, some may not, but that doesn't mean that anyone is more or less deserving of support than anyone else. And so I want to provide, options. And so yeah, I have like individual coaching sessions, where we meet for 45 minutes. It's a Zoom call, it's one on one, or if people want to bring their partners and want to do couples or groups or triads, heck yeah, we do it all. And it's providing that individual support there live in the moment. And even with that, like there's no package or program. It's if people, it's however often you want to meet. I'm here for you. Just schedule time. Um, but I have that, so I do the individual coaching sessions. And then yeah, like you shared, I have what I've called the Bad Boys Club. And this I created this space because I wanted to separate out a specific space for gay men who are exploring like sexual empowerment and relationships. What I was finding is that like trying to tie this in with more the word I'm going to use is general, but I don't mean that in a like less than or better than way, but it's just different. Like trying to tie sexual empowerment work and relationship empowerment work in with like general coaching of like this is anxiety, stress, stuff like that. Like it wasn't meeting and it wasn't going to the depths that it needed to go to. And so a separate space definitely called for it. And so um, I created the Bad Boys Club. So it's a part of my website. It's free. But it is a member space, and I deliberately have it as a member space because that requires people to sign up with their email address. And I do that not to collect emails, but because it provides a layer of safety for everybody inside of that group, where that kind of helps us to keep that space safe for the people inside of it. Because we still interact with a lot of hatred, a lot of negativity that says like don't talk about sex, don't talk about different types of relationships, and so like that barrier and that boundary needs to be there for the safety and the protection of everyone. And so I have that space, and inside of the Bad Boys Club, I have a blog which each week I'll kind of hit on a different topic, often just either what I'm feeling in that moment or what I've talked with clients recently on. I think this week's post was on shame and criticism and comparison. And then I'll tie that into how that may show up with sex within exploring different types of relationships. And so it's very centralized and focused on sex and relationships. But then part of that, people can also join a Discord channel where they can interact with other members. So they can connect with other gay men who are a part of that community. So they can chat, just get to know each other, build connections across the world, just to help reduce that loneliness, but to help build the connection that we do feel. Then inside of that, I also have the back room, and this space is super fun. The back room is it's essentially like my version of OnlyFans, and so it's a paid space, it's a subscription space, it's adults only, not safe for work. It's X-rated. Like, be very cautious. Like, let me be extremely clear in that. But in that space, like I'm teaching the practice of sexual mindfulness of what that can look like, because in a lot of the coaching work that I've done with gay men over the years, it's one thing to talk about it, but to see it embodied is totally different. Or we may talk about, okay, this is how shame can impact you, this is how it can look, this is how it feels, but to recognize it and observe it in the moment when it's happening and how to work through that, or how to even heal from all of those old messages is a totally different practice of its own. And so I hold that space as, the best way I can describe it is like role modeling, where I literally and physically like share with you my sexual mindfulness practices to provide an example of what it looks like to celebrate our bodies, to enjoy masturbation and sexual self-care, and also to still work through the shame of it. Like the video that I posted the other day was a masturbation practice, but I was having just I myself personally was having a lot of shame, and I was telling I was like kind of speaking out the thoughts that I was having at that time. And I do that to provide an example of like, just this is what it looks like. So if anybody's watching it and they're experiencing something similar, A, they know that they're not alone, but B, they have a potential tool of how to navigate through that when that shows up for them the next time. And uh, yeah, so like that space is really fun. And I also just want to acknowledge like that it's not for everybody, and not just in the grand scheme of like um, this is an adults only space, but it's not for everyone. Also within the gay community itself, because then the pure fact alone of me being naked in front of a camera and engaging in like sexual self-care naturally can bring up a lot of emotion for the person on the other side. I had a client yesterday who told me that, and I'm so grateful that he told me this, but he was like, I logged in and I was actually judging the hell out of you for doing this space. And I was like, thank you for telling me, because then that indicates like where we're kind of at. And that indicates, like what we are working through ourselves. And so just the pure fact that I have this space that is quite radically like sexually empowerment based can trigger a whole hell of a lot of insecurities in somebody. And so if this space isn't for you, that's totally, totally okay. But if you can find it to be a helpful tool or resource, then that's what it's there for too.
I just love your approach. I just absolutely love it. I mean, there's something about sexuality that sex talk therapy is wonderful. Talk therapy in general is an absolutely magical, transformative process. But there's something when it comes to our sex lives that requires the doing of things, the bringing of the experience into our bodies. And so, like you're saying, whether it's a solo practice or a shared practice, watching it modeled is very different than discussing it conceptually, theorizing about it, which is also can be very valuable for some people. But especially in working with clients, requiring clients to, clients like to hide. So requiring clients to, or maybe a gentler way of saying it is offering them opportunities to engage in this space wherever they are, like you said, but then also with different facets of their being, their physical being, their mind being, their fantasy being, all of it. You're able to give them this full buffet of healing options, an array of choices, which I just think is so healing. And you're also modeling a new way of being for queer people that is unapologetically ourselves, unabashedly who we are, not in response to or kowtowing to a different culture, but creating our own culture. Um, you are, like you said in your interaction with your client, you're dealing with issues as they happen, and modeling to clients the inevitable discord and confusion and anxiety that comes up when you have been saturated in sexual shame your entire life, like many of us. Not all of your clients have had that experience, I'm sure, but a lot of them maybe have, given the community you're working with. So you're able to hit it from multiple angles, and thereby kind of modeling that sexual mindfulness that which is ironic because we're doing it with our bodies. And so it's like, even though it's mindfulness, it can sound like it's just talking, it's just thinking, it's just no, it's actually, what are we doing in the world? How are we being with ourselves? How are we experiencing sex? How can we do that differently? And so, whether through free or paid services in this wide array of options, you're giving people a lot of different tools to explore and outlets and ways to learn, based on what they need in the moment. I guess I'm curious. You're such a unique guy, and I've just been, really enjoyed meeting you. I'm wondering what you hold most dear in your life.
Ooh, that's a good question. Ooh, Oh man. For me, oh, I hold I hold a lot of gratitude, like just to exist. Um, and I think there was a lot of times throughout my life where I didn't feel that. And so to feel that now is actually really special. Um, and like the subsequent like nature of what that means, like for me to exist right now, of, like, yeah, my ability to have these deep conversations and, work with clients on things that I not only used to struggle with, but I still struggle with. Like what an honor that is. And like I always feel like it's such a sacred space. And, like, how fucking cool is it that somebody feels safe enough with me to talk about some of the things that they never shared with anyone, or even their partner. Like, I just hold that with such a respect. And, I feel very grateful for that. And like, I'm just grateful for all the blessings in like my personal life too, like my relationships that fuel me up, my family and my friends, and uh my dog, where I live, um my body, the things that, like, that I can exercise, like that I can go outside, the sunsets, like it all of that is so, it's so enriching. And yeah, I think, like, in the intro, I shared like a little bit about my grandpa, and he was my biggest role model. He passed away when I was quite young, and but he just laid the foundation for my values and my perspective so much. And what I love, there's so much I loved about him, but like he really struggled with depression himself, and I do too. And so, growing up on a farm in like conservative Midwest, watching somebody and observing somebody like role model, and especially like a highly regarded male in the community at that time, like watching him role model his own navigation of depression, like gave me that permission to do the same. But you know, it, it, it also helped instill in me like this depth of appreciation for every moment, where like I'm I'm really grateful to hold this perspective that, you know, today may be my last day, or I don't know if my loved ones will be here tomorrow. Like, I don't know what tomorrow is going to look like. And yeah, that can be terrifying and petrifying, but it's also a fact. And also that liberates us in this moment to be like, well, this is the only space that we have then. Like, we only have today. So of course I'm going to text my mom and tell her how much I love her, and, tell my sister that she makes me laugh and I love her too. And I love my nieces, and, the people in my community, and my partner and my friends. And like I'm just so grateful for that alone. So thank you for asking that question. That was really beautiful.
Yeah. What gives you hope?
Ooh. When especially like with this work, like seeing these moments of of growth and wins, and, celebration among clients, like, gives me so much hope for our community. And that can look so vastly different, and it does look so vastly different from one client to the next. Maybe one client's win was them stepping out of a relationship that was really unhealthy for them. And so that gives me hope that, that person was honoring themselves, but also their partner or their partners too, and seeing that this wasn't a good match. Like, it gives me hope that people are listening to like their internal voice. Or it gives me hope uh, when a client goes to a hookup party for the first time in his life, and that's been something he's been wanting to do since he was, a teen, and he's in his 50s. Like, how fucking cool is that? Um, one of my favorite clients, they're all my favorite. I'm going to get in trouble. There, but he's in his 70s, and he's still okay with me chatting about him a little bit. Like, he just recently found kind of like a commune of gay men that he's having, like, deep passionate sex with. They're also friends, and they live together, and they're building new dreams together. And I was like, how incredible is that? Like, that's beautiful. And so, like, it gives me hope to see people inside the gay community and outside, just in general, like, just, it's going to sound cheesy, but just being true to them, but in a way that's respectful and non-judgmental of everybody else. So when people say, like, this is what I want to do for me, and also I'm celebrating for you, that's something that might be totally different. But, like, how cool for both of us that we are listening to our own self and moving forward with, like, that aligned energy. Like, that's what gives me hope.
That's beautiful. Where do you seek refuge?
I definitely seek refuge in my relationships. Relationships are huge for me. I know that I can't do this life alone. I don't want to, but I also know that I just literally physically can't. Um, and so I'm extremely grateful to have a variety of relationships that help to support me with what I'm needing most at that time. And, just based on the connections that we have, whether it is with my partner or my best friends or family or clients, that if there is any support that I need, that I'm grateful and blessed to have the opportunity to have options for whatever refuge is calling at that time. Then I also, like, seek refuge in, like, in spirituality, in, like, the grounding and the the rootedness of it all, of the fact that I don't know what, like, yeah, I know that I'm here to help people, but in the grand scheme of things, I don't know like what's happening. Like, you know, like, there's so many unanswered questions, but there's there's a beauty in that, because then it helps me to remind myself that, okay, it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter if, like, I don't have the fanciest car or the fanciest house, or if I didn't get my to-do list done, or if Phoebe, my dog, peed on the floor. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, like there's a lighthearted, like, joy in that. And so I kind of seek refuge in that reminder too, of, even when shit really, really sucks, it all works out in the end.
I'm going to ask you a loaded question because of your bio, what you wrote in there, and because of what you just said, and my experience of you, meeting you today. How are you redeemed? How do you find redemption?
Ooh, that's a great question. Oh my gosh, you were a question master. These are all so good. Ooh, ooh, ooh. I think, like, when I first hear that, when I hear the word redeemed, like, that takes me back to
Uh-huh.
Bethlehem Lutheran Church.
Yep.
And honestly, I don't know if I have thought of what that, or even thought of that word, like, since then. Um, and so I think, like, in this moment, like, I went to ask myself, like, okay, what's the definition of that? And so for me, I guess, like, to be redeemed now at this point in my life, it's that moment when I've fallen down and I need to stand back up. Like, how do I redeem myself from that fall? Um, and for me, it's digging back into the reason why. Like, not only why am I here, but why am I doing what I'm doing in the first place? Um, because I know within like the the depth of my gut and my soul and my spirit that like this is what I need to do right now. That may change, but like as of this point in time, like the work that I'm doing is exactly what I need to be doing. Um, and so anytime that I fall or I get scared or worried or I get like criticism or whatever that is, like leaning back in on that voice, like inside, um, and like checking back in on like my belief system, my values, and um, I'm tangent real quick. We'll come right back. Like I'm a huge Lady Gaga fan. She like just biggest little monster there is. Like um, when she was getting really big was when I was going through like some really tough times. Her music just kind of got me through it. And so she gave this interview several years ago. But she was talking about like she said this phrase of like, if I can go to bed at night and lay my head on the pillow and and know that I've done all that I could or that I did a good job that day, then that's all that matters. And I love that visual. And so in those moments where I do fall, where I need redemption, like I'll check back in on like those internal beliefs and values of like, okay, do I still stand by everything that I've done when I go to bed tonight? And if there is, um, however it lands with somebody else, like, do I know that I did what I felt most connected to and was correct for me in that point in time? And if I can say yes, then then like that's all that matters. So that's where I kind of find redemption.
I love it. I love it. I have shared a lot on this show about my experience in the 12 steps, and that's a key tenet about, before I retire at night, I kind of survey the landscape of the day and take a fearless moral inventory of all that I experienced. And, you kind of described that. I was hoping that word might trigger you, redemption. It's something. It's a definitely in the U.S. This is a global podcast, of course, but in the U.S. that's a very loaded word for a lot of us who've come from a different background. So I thank you for sharing that. It's Kevin. It's just been such a pleasure to chat with you today. It's been an absolute delight to meet you. You're such an amazing healer. You bring such a positive, joyful energy to the world. You're going to help so many people in this lifetime, and I'm just going to be cheering you on the whole way. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's such an honor. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for providing this space and this time. This has been amazing. I'm truly thankful and grateful for you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, yes, you're so welcome. And like I said, listeners, we're going to load up the show notes with all sorts of goodies so you can find Kevin in whatever, space suits you best in whatever moment you're in. And that's one of the pleasures of engaging with somebody who gives you lots of entry points and lots of options to consume their work. So I really encourage you to do it. He's producing some amazing stuff, and I know I've been a huge fan for a long time. Well, congratulations, listeners. You've made it through another episode of Not Going Quietly. I'm so proud of you. We could not do this show without you and your love and support. My name is Britt East, and until next time, bye-bye. You've been listening to Not Going Quietly with your host, Britt East. Thanks so much for joining us on this wild ride as we explore ways to help everyone leap into life with a greater sense of clarity, passion, purpose, and joy. Check out our show notes for links, additional information, and episodes located on your favorite podcast platform.